it's convenient for this to start right now. Alright, hello everyone. My presentation and paper will be about the Chicago heat wave of 1995 and specifically its effects on the elderly. My topic description is in 1995, a heat wave hit Chicago. Um, Between July 12th and July 16th were the hottest days. On July 15th, it hit 106 degrees Fahrenheit. 739 deaths during this period were heat-related, and the most affected were those who were largely socially disadvantaged, such as the poor, African Americans, the socially isolated, and the subsection of people I'll be focusing on in my paper is the elderly. Some key resources I've found. There's my published sources along with some other sources that do come from really reputable places. Some interesting things I've found is the heat-related fatalities in 1995. This website right there. It's basically just a graph that compares the heat-related fatalities in all 50 states, which Chicago in particular is an outrageous number during 1995. And then it also breaks them down by age, so you can see who was more affected by heat-related fatalities, which I thought that was really interesting. And then I have this published source up here, Denaturalizing Disaster, a social autopsy of the 1995 Chicago heat wave, Kleinenberg. A really interesting source I had found was Dying Alone, an interview with Eric Kleinberg, where he talks more in depth than he did in his article, in his published article. So I thought that was pretty cool. So yeah. The main findings I've gotten so far are that more than 700 deaths were caused by the heat wave that hit Chicago in 1995, and 25% of those deaths were people ages 70 to 79, so a quarter of all those deaths came from people solely in that age bracket. Elderly men had a higher fatality rate than women, possibly because of the lack of social equity. So what they talked about in that is that older men didn't have as large of a social circle. They didn't have as many programs to keep them active out in the community, so most of them just stayed inside, didn't have anyone to bring them water, any ice. They most likely didn't have an AC if they were older and in a lower income, and they were in a lower socioeconomic area, and things like that. Relative risks, or RR, were higher during this event for those who were socially disadvantaged, including the elderly, specifically older African Americans. And heat wasn't the only factor of this disaster. Social issues also played a part. The next step in my research process is continuing searching for statistics related to the elderly and the heat wave. Like I mentioned before in one of my other video posts about our presentation and paper, it's harder to find specific published papers about the elderly and the heat wave, but many of my sources do talk about it. You just kind of have to dig through it and compare what you're reading between the articles. And then figure out the clear factors that kept the elderly from being safe during the heat wave. I mentioned like social things, such as like friend groups and support and things like that. But I'd like to get in, if I can find more details about it, figure out the actual factors. Help, or do I need anything, or do I have any questions? The only thing I really have a question about is after looking at um, the syllabus, it mentioned something about having 10 social media posts or topics about our topic, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to find that way back in 1955. Um, so do I need to try to dig for something like that? I could probably find like newspaper articles maybe that have been put online from that date, but um, that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed.